Thank you. That's just the only way that I can open it. I have a lot of questions, probably like a lot of people.
You'd be surprised at how most of your questions are all the same.
Yeah.
They're about different subjects, but it's the same question.
Yeah.
And that's fortunate because we only have one answer.
Great. So I found for myself that, my emotions vacillate.
Based upon what you're focused on.
Yeah.
So my focus vacillates. Is that what you mean?
Say that one more time, sorry.
My focus vacillates.
Yes, it does.
My focus vacillates because I don't stay focused on anything long enough to gain enough momentum.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing when it's unwanted things, because that way I'm fickle and nothing really gets a hold.
Yeah.
But when it's things that I care about, my vacillating focus doesn't serve me very well.
Mm-hmm.
Next.
Thank you. I love you. I just need to say that. I find myself often in the state of overwhelmment.
Well, let's just briefly, this will be very brief. Overwhelmment is asking for more than I'm allowing. Overwhelmment is a whole bunch of unresolved flowing. It's a bottleneck. Overwhelmment is a bottleneck. It's because I'm asking and asking and asking, but I'm not receiving. And so my valve isn't open and I'm not letting the resolutions happen. That's all that it is. It's not too many subjects. You could focus on so many more subjects than you ever do. And if you're in a state of clarity and expectation, Esther said to a driver yesterday, she said, I have this saying and I say it all the time to myself. And he said, what is it? And Esther said, things are always working out for me. Things are always working out for me. And he said, and they are. Look, you got me. Things are always working out for me. Things are always working out for me. That's a really good statement to say and mean that will sort of soothe that overwhelmment. We interrupted you, but we want you to understand what overwhelmment is.
Thank you.
Everything's about balance, in and out, in and out. If you were to only breathe in and never breathe out, you'd be overwhelmed. The other way works. If you were to only breathe out and never breathe in, there'd be a shortage consciousness there worth talking about, wouldn't there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's balance, in and out.
Got it. Thank you. I guess part of my question around this is I occasionally have taken medication and drugs to actually work with that, to balance my seam of overwhelmment.
No, you don't balance your overwhelmment. What you do is mute your ability to know you're overwhelmed.
Oh, got it. Yeah. Yeah. What happens?
Which is not altogether a bad thing, because feeling that frenzy isn't good for you either. But it's like putting a Band-Aid on a gushing wound. It's really not the answer.
Well, what happens to asking when you're in that state of what a drug or anything kind of puts you in?
What happens to asking? Ooh, that's the best question anyone has ever put to us. What happens to asking? It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Because once you ask, we've demonstrated this, you've all heard it and watched us do this. So when life causes you to know what you don't want, you know what you do want, and you emanate an asking, a vibrational request. And it moves forward into this vibrational atmosphere that we want so much for you to accept the reality of this vibrational reality that we call it the vortex. Wrote 2 books about it so that you would accept its existence. Life causes you to ask, even if you don't use words. When life causes you to ask, you emanate a request that Source answers. And the fact that Source has now answered the request, meaning Source is giving undivided attention to your request. That's your inner being. That's that soul, Source part of you, focused relentlessly, never-endingly upon what you've asked for. And now, think about law of attraction now, responding to that focal point of your inner being, which means that desire, what happens to my desire? Your desire just continues to expand and become more, which means once you launch one, it's prudent for you to move in the direction of it because of the expanse between the desire that is yours and is tied to you because you gave birth to it, and you in the moment because of the thoughts you're thinking. If the expanse, the vibrational difference is too great, then what happens to my desire? It gets greater and greater and greater. What happens to me if I don't move with it? I feel worse and worse and worse until I say I'm overwhelmed. or depressed or afraid.
I'm just taking that in. Yeah.
We want you to feel the bigness of this, but we also want you to feel the ease of how easy it is really to keep up with your own desires. You just have to talk in favor of them, not against them. Let's take a subject. Let's do something real here. Let's take a subject that you feel overwhelmed about. Just name a subject, one that's easy for you to talk about, one that you don't mind talking about with all of us.
Yeah.
A subject that you feel overwhelmed about. What's the topic?
Body. Right now. I feel overwhelmed with my body.
All right. So now talk to us about your body.
Okay. And just standard anything. Okay.
The things that you usually say and feel about it.
I'm not happy with my body.
All right, so you got a what isness problem going on, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, facing a current reality. And this is such a good topic because there are two topics that really are standouts for the current what you're living being so in your face that it's hard for you to do anything else. One is your body and how it feels or how you perceive it to be, and money. Those two subjects, because they affect so much of what you're doing and where you are, that they sort of dominate your vibration. It's hard to have a manifestation that I can see and hear and smell and taste and touch that I don't keep seeing and smelling and tasting and touching and hearing. It's not easy to have this reality that is so real and so obvious and so apparent and so everywhere you go. Kind of take your body with you everywhere you go. Yeah. So as you take your body everywhere you go, it's on your mind. And it's on your mind in its current form. A lot of people have a very difficult time even giving themselves permission to visualize something different because it's just on your mind. But if it could not be on your mind so much, the way you feel about your body would become less and less active, and the desires that you've been creating, with every uncomfortable moment, you've created a desire that your inner being is aware of. So we have some practical questions for you.
Go for it.
You've been listening to us for a little while?
Yes.
Which do you think is a more wrong part of you? Your inner being source you or the physical you in your body right here and now? Who's been around the longest?
Inner being source me.
And energetically speaking, who do you think has the most energetic clout?
Inner being source me.
So your inner being, the source of you, I like those words you're framing there, is really, really a powerful part of you. Really powerful. And has really strong attraction power. So can we convince you that there is a reality that already exists that you just haven't allowed to turn to a thing? In other words, there's a vibrational version that you haven't allowed to turn to a thing. And the only reason that you haven't allowed the vibrational version to turn to a thing is because the thing you've already got has so much of your attention.
Yeah.
So does it follow that if you could give that less attention, and as we said, two subjects are the hardest to not give attention to because they keep coming up, but do you think that you have the ability to just give it a rest on that subject for a while?
I do.
While your inner being continues to know what your inner being knows about this subject?
Yes.
And is it logical to you that if you could do that, which means if you could not think about it, which means if you could stop giving it go power as far as you're concerned, that it would dissipate and that the struggle would become less, the resistance would become less?
Yes.
You follow all of that. Now we want to talk about how thoughts turn to things. How do thoughts turn to things? Well, it's too complicated to explain.
We should all go home.
But you can witness it. First, appeal to your own logic. Do you see any pipelines trucking in new resources to this planet from other galaxies? Have you actually caught one of those spaceships and watched them download crude oil into your holes? Are there little men out there pounding diamonds into your diamond mines? Is there a truckload of food and seeds raining like frogs from the sky? Or are thoughts turning to things? Is it vibration maturing and becoming something that you can witness with your physical senses? Now we know it's a stretch. It's not easy to be so good at facing reality with your physical senses and then to have someone say, don't do that so much. Don't face reality with your physical senses so much, because the current reality that you're facing is preventing the one that you really would prefer to replace it. But that really is what's going on. You just can't keep beating the drum of what is and let the new improvement happen. The new improvement is in process. Over time, in wanting to orient all of you to the way that creation happens, we explain to you that it's a vibrational universe and you get what you think about and blah, blah, blah. You're tired of hearing all of that. And today we're saying to you that you've created a vibrational reality that will become the reality that you can see and hear and smell and taste and touch, but you've got to orient yourself in a way that you can, which means, just like that woman in the airport, you got to stop talking so that you can hear. It was true of both sides of that in that case, but your inner being is always offering you. Your inner being never becomes impatient. Your inner being will never yell at you. As long as you keep thinking about things the way they are, they're not going to change, because your inner being is not that angry mother, and your inner being is not on drugs either. Your inner being knows what you want, and here it is, and what the path of least resistance is for you to get to it. So here's the question. How are you going to put yourself in a position of hearing? Because you've got all these thoughts that are powerfully emanating from you that are drowning out your ability to hear. Your ability to hear, your ability to receive an impulse. Impulses, when you have an impulse from source, an impulse meaning it feels like something you really want to do, an impulse that's strong enough that you want to follow through on it. So how are you going to put yourself in a position where you can hear? Well, we have some ideas for you. The only way that you're going to be able to hear what's coming from source is you've got to stop the chatter that's coming from every place else. So it means not only are you going to have to stop shouting into the wilderness about what you want in vain, but you got to stop listening to all of the peanut gallery that's in that see it, hear it, smell it, taste it, touch it phase with you too. In other words, you sort of have to quiet the physical world just for a little while. We suggest 15 minutes a day. That's enough, which is what meditation is. If you can sit and meditate, which means quiet your mind, which simply means stop the chatter, simply means put yourself in a place of listening. Put yourself in a place where you can hear. And you're not going to put yourself in a place where you can hear when you're out in the world, when you're on the bus, when you're sitting on a bench next to a lady on a telephone. Everybody's on the phone. There's no silence anywhere. Everywhere you go, there's something going on. There's something going on everywhere you go. How are you going to get to a quiet place? Well, you have to do it on purpose. And it's not just a quiet place, it's a quiet state. You've got to quiet the noise before you can hear the answers to the questions, before you can receive the solutions to the problems, before you can receive the next impulse. Because, you see, there is a path of least resistance. Your inner being knows. Consider this. We so want you to hear this. Your inner being knows every single thing you want. It's so vivid and clear. There's a vibrational reality that's so bright and beautiful, and you've created it so magnificently, and you're going to love it as it manifests. But we want you to love it even before it manifests. That's really a key, which means you've got to stop looking at the evidence that defies the new in order to allow the new. Because when you look at the evidence that defies it, then you don't encourage it. You don't allow it into your experience, you see. So when you quiet your mind, when you actually focus upon something in meditation, like a flickering candle or a dripping faucet or a sound in the air conditioning or something, even your own breathing sometimes is helpful, anything that you can focus upon to focus yourself into a quieted place where your mind mostly is still. What happens then, because your inner being knows where you are in terms of your mind, in terms of your physical personality, knows where you are in relationship to everything that you've asked for. Your inner being knows what your path of least resistance, what your mind path of least resistance, what thought is likely to get you to where you want to be. Your inner being knows where everything is and knows what your path of least resistance is.